What were your parents like?
Well, my father, we were in the beer business. This little town of Smithton, PA, population 800, had a brewery that my grandfather built called the Jones Brewing Company. And the beer was called Stoney's beer. It's still in, the brewery is there, but it's no longer in operation. But the beer is still being made at Rolling Rock in Pittsburgh. And my grandfather was called Stony Jones, and my grandmother lived to be 97. Grandfather died at 52 because he had a leg removed. But as I said, I was an only child. But all the family lived close. My grandmother had 8 children, 4 boys and 4 girls, and they all lived in these. They all took care of the brewery. My father went around and sold the beer. He was the youngest of the boys, and I would, because I was an only child and very close to my father, he would take me with him. I was in more bars at 6, 7, 8, 9 than any young person had ever been in.
And you never drank? You're never an alcoholic? Or
no,
never
I drink,
abused
though.
alcohol?
I started, I have a drink every day at 5 o'clock before my dinner. But I was never, my grandfather, this is funny, my grandfather, I was about 5. And we lived in my grandmother's house. She had a huge 18-room house, and we had half the rooms, and she had half the rooms. Because my grandfather died, and then we moved in there. But before he died, he was in a wheelchair. He had one leg removed because of diabetes. And my cousin and I, she was the same age as me, we were in the kitchen with him, and he said, "Listen, I got something for you." And he said, "Get up, sit on the sink." He said, "I have a bag of jelly beans in one hand, and I have a shot glass full of beer in the other." He said, "If you drink the beer, you get the jelly beans." And we're 5 years old. Well, my cousin downed the beer, had the jelly beans, and I went, and I didn't get the jelly beans.
Oh, but you tried.
But I tried, exactly, But it was a wonderful way to grow up. I mean, I had...
How were you the only child back then, a small town?
I think my mother tried. I asked her that too, but she did try, but it just never, as she said to me, it just never happened, Shirley, it just never happened. And I know that, but when I had Sean, my firstborn, my father was ecstatic, to have a boy, a first grandchild. And
how old were you?
I was, let's say I married Jack when I was about 22, about 24, yeah.
That's young.
Yeah.
Not, good timing back then, but now
Yeah, Jack and I were working together a lot. We were in Pittsburgh doing a show, and my parents had just bought a house. They just left my grandma's house, bought a house sort of downtown Pittsburgh, and took my son there, and my father was ecstatic. I'd put him into bed for his afternoon nap, and one little cry, my father would go, "No, I'll get him. Dad, don't. To leave him alone, he'll go back to sleep."
So you're close to both your parents?
Yes.
Yeah.
More close to my father than my mother, but my father, my father died, young, a doctor's accident, believe it or not. He had lung cancer. They were all heavy smokers then, and he had lung cancer, and went and had a lung removed. I remember I was in Florida then with Jack doing we had a nightclub act that we toured with, and she called me. She said he was terrified of hospitals, terrified. And I talked to him. I said, "Dad, you got to go. You got to do this. You'll be fine then." So he did, and he went in and had the lung removed. And what happened was the doctor that did the surgery was a major surgeon. Had to go to another hospital to do other things. So he put him in charge of like an intern, for the after. And my mother was in the room with him, and the intern came in to examine him, and my mother said to the intern, "He looks a little bluish, and the intern, he said, "No, he's fine, he's just fine." Well, the other lung was filling up, and he drowned.